Hello folks, it is Sunday and I'm going to go ahead and trim off the plugs I have for these screw holes. We're just using old toothpicks. So I got my flush cut pliers here, and all I got to do is set it down on the back of the wood nice and flat and trim these ends. And no matter how close you are to trimming up these ends, there's always going to be a piece sticking up, and that is why we have the file here flatten that out. And also, it's done, we left this one here with the glue sticking up without cleaning the squeeze out, so some of that we could trim off with pliers, but you can't get it all out. So I'm not going to use this on here because I'm not going to use this file for flattening that out, mostly because I don't want any gunk stuck in the bottom of this. So we'll get these first. Just slowly filing down all the way down to the surface. It's close. So that's nice and flush here. Got a little bit here to take off. This one, that's done. Well, I guess Cat found his toy. Okay, those are done. And yeah, I'm going to end up staining this neck and body, so the poles will be sticking out. So pretty much the only way you're going to cover that up is if you put a solid color on top of it, nice opaque color. So that's going to be on there. I'm not too worried about it at the moment. Hold on one second. Okay, I have to get the little ball away from Kitty for now. So that's what he's playing with. He always seems to want to play whenever, I'm kind of doing something where I'm involved, have to be involved either on the phone or recording something. So with the glue that's from the squeeze out, and try to get as much of it with my chisel here. Oh, he's whining now. I'm gonna get as much of it out with chisel. Go to the bedroom. Alright. Keep them in there for a while, hopefully. Anyway, where was I? Get as much of this squeeze out of with my chisel here, as I was saying. I'm just trying to get the stuff around it. Another thing too, your chisel's nice and sharp, you can slice. Always being careful to keep the file flat on your surface so you don't gouge the body or the neck or whatever you're trying to clean up. Need to resharpen this one. Got some gunk on top and bottom. So I think this is just some glue that dried up that I forgot to clean off, and oh well, easy to clean up, not a big deal. Okay, that's cut. All the squeeze out's gone from that, so go back to the file. It's almost done. And that's that. Close up of it. You can still see the holes, but nice and plugged up. I got some tuners coming sometime next week. And oh, I also figured out that the scale length for this guitar is actually 24 3/4, so that's where I measured it out at. And like I said the other day, or was it yesterday, there's a little bit of a gap here on the back of this neck, or the back of this fingerboard, so I'll get a better reading or better measurement once the nut comes in and I plug it in there temporarily. But if all else fails, I'm going to glue this piece of veneer that I just found laying around here to the back of that, so it takes up that little spot behind the nut. That's where you can see that maple just sticking out. So, and all this will be done as soon as the nut comes in. But right now there's some finish or glue residue sitting at the bottom of that nut slot, so we shall take our needle file, the flat needle file from StewMac. It's this set here. Again, you could find this stuff cheaper somewhere else, but it was there. Anyway, right now we're just going to clean up the bottom of this slot very slowly. Oh, before I forget, clean your files. It's a little wire brush from Harbor Freight, so just cleaning out all the gunk there, so the next time I use it, it'll cut nice and clean. That's done. Got a little bit of vacuuming to do later, but right now just gonna flatten this nut slot, and flatten it because you want the nut to sit all the way down flat up against the surface. And I checked this earlier, or when I got the neck, and the bottom is fairly flat, so there's it's not tilting this way or that. There aren't any weird bumps. And right now I'm filing, and you can see that the parts that are still a little bit shiny, that's where they put the finish on, and it's just sitting, you know, some of that's just sitting a little bit below the actual flat surface. So just taking a file, going back and forth to flatten that area out. And you want it to sit flat so you get even pressure all the way down with your nut when the strings are sitting on top of that, because if you don't have full contact with the nut from the string to the nut to the back of the neck, or even to the bridge, you won't get a full response. Some of your strings might sound dead. Nah, and we don't want that. We want even string response all the way all the way through each and every one of the strings. So I'll flatten this out, clean my file here, and this file here is pretty much dead flat, so we'll get a nice even pressure all the way through, so we get a nice flat surface. Excuse my big head. I'll go ahead and pause here. You don't need to watch the rest of this, but I'm going to file it down all the way until it's perfectly flat. Okay, I'm back. The nut slot is now perfectly flat. Tiny bit of finish in here, but I did not want to take any more out, mostly because the GFS didn't give the full measurement of the pre-slotted aged bone nut that they have for sale that I ordered. which is 42 millimeters, and this neck slot, or the nut slot, is just a tiny bit over 42, or a tiny bit under, which is fine. Just stick it out a little bit. Just got to make sure it's centered perfectly on there. And I don't want to take any more material off because, one, there's going to be some super glue, a couple drops of super glue. Some people put a lot on there, but you know, from most of the luthiers that I've seen doing this, they don't put a lot. It's just one drop here, one drop of super glue here, one drop of super glue here, and that's it. You got to make sure it sits nice and flat, and the glue will have something to sit on outside of there, but maybe just a little bit more. Flatten that out. One thing too I'm being really careful about is these needle files from StewMac. The edges are not ground flat, so I'm trying not to push backwards or push forward, so because I don't want to do that. I want to have the little piece of maple sticking out on the back here to give me a nice shelf to sit the veneer on once the nut comes in. But again, as I stated before, I'm not going to do that until I actually get the nut in and the tuners and the bridge, because I'm going to do some intonation. And the reason for that is I want to make sure that this is, you know, the nut is sitting exactly where it's supposed to, because once I get the guitar tuned up and intonated with the bridge, tailpiece, tuners, and nut on, I want to make sure that this gap here is going to sit exactly where it needs to, or the nut's going to sit exactly where it needs to. And to check that, you check your intonation first from the brain dead now, but you check the 12th fret intonation by checking an open string first, tuning up to E, or in my case E flat is what I normally tune to, then checking the harmonic on the 12th fret, then then fretting the 12th fret and see how close those two are to E. And then if it's sharp, you move it back, move the bridge back. If it's flat, you move it forward. Or it might have that backwards, I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't mind being corrected at all, as long as you're not an ass about it, we're cool. Anyway, so once I get the 12th fret intonation, I gotta check the intonation from the E string to the 1st fret to the 2nd fret. And looking at StewMac, they have a StewMac.com. They have a fret distance calculator from depending on the scale length and the amount of frets on you have. They calculate what the distance is supposed to be from the edge of the nut where your string sits out of, where the string starts to be the open string, all the way to the center, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, all the way down to all your frets. They have precise measurements on that, and you know, they've been around for a while, so I'm going to trust it. And my math sucks, so I'd rather use a calculator if I have the option. And that is the main concern I have for this guitar. So I want it to play well. I want it to, you know, be a decent guitar. It's not going to look great. It's not going to be from the best parts available. This is going to be an all GFS guitar. I built a Telecaster a while back. I gave that to a friend as a gift. Tele is just not my thing. It was a full GFS guitar with their noiseless Telecaster Neovin pickups. It was extra hot ones, and I switched out the bridge with one of their rail pickups, which actually sounded really nice. But I just not a big fan of Telecasters. I like how they look, but not big on the sound. Anyway, a little too twangy for my taste, even though I did record a couple songs with it. Anyway, moving on. On their site, I did not find any mini pots that'll go through F slot here, or the F hole. And that's one thing I don't like about the semi-hollow bodies. Most of them don't have a control plane in the back. And usually when you're putting one together, you're going to go through the F hole or a slot on the side where the humbucker is. And unfortunately, all I have are full-size pots and not mini pots. So the problem with this is I'm going to have 4 of these, selector switch, that'll go here where the tape is covering it up, and an input jack. And those have to be pre-wired before, you know, they all go in there. There are tons of tutorials on how to do it, but my problem is these pots are full size and can't go in there by themselves, and they're less likely to go in there easily when they're all wired together. So I have 2 choices. One is to order mini pots to go in there, and which I kind of don't want to do, mostly because for some reason I have something against mini pots, and I honestly don't know why. I just do. Maybe it's this thing in my head saying, mini pots don't have full power like full size pots, blah 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 blah. Just little stupid things like that. You know, believe what you want. But you know, I'm just not a fan of them, and I want full size pots to sit in these. But the problem is they can't fit. So, one of the stupid things I was thinking of while drinking my apple juice was to, here's my pencil, cut these F holes like this, so I have somewhere to slip those pots in. But I don't want to do that because, you know, these F holes look nice. I'm not the biggest fan of them. Like, you know, they're so common on hollow bodies that, you know, they're kind of bore me to death. But, you know, I don't want to run the risk of really doing too much to the body, especially, you know, on the surface of it. I mean, it's not going to be a great looking guitar, but I want it to look decent, but play decent most of all. Anyway, the second option I have is to, because you got your pickups that are going to sit here, there's a slot where the neck pickup wiring will go through here, which will come out at the bridge end, and will go through this hole. And the bridge wiring will go down there the same. I do have to figure out a way to get a ground wire onto the bridge as well. So I'll be looking that up later. So anyway, as far as the pots go, the more realistic option in my head, besides buying mini pots, is to chisel out this section in here, make that hole a lot bigger, which looks like it's going to take some doing. I got to take about maybe ½ an inch away from there and then straight down to be able to fit these pots all the way through. Actually, it might be bigger than that. Even with the wiring, it's still going to be bigger than that. So those are my 2 options I want to do. I want to go with, that I'm thinking about going with anyway. But I could also just not be a cheap ass and go ahead and buy some mini pots and save myself the time and hassle of having to chip out more wood and run the risk of chipping out too much. you know, risking the stability of the top by taking out more wood, and particularly don't want to do that. So I'll make the decision whenever time gets here, when the rest of the parts get here, and probably sometime the end of the month or next month I'm going to buy the pickups. But for now, that's where I'm at. We get the nut slot flattened down nicely. I'm waiting on parts I'm waiting on the tuners, the nut, and the bridge to come in. Already got the tailpiece. Oh, which brings me to the tailpiece. This is made for a regular arch top body, which is a lot thicker than this one. So this is a thinner style body. Problem with this, it's going to sit here, but you got about 1/3 of an inch sticking out the bottom. So what I'm going to have to do is cut this out with my Dremel, and not an easy task, especially when you got 2 cats around, but here's to hoping that they just decide to, you know, run off as soon as they hear it. So that I could try to find something else and replace this with something else, but I actually like this one. I like the open feel of it. It's a real different design. But I'll have to cut that piece off and then drill a hole through the center once I get my strings on there and my bridge set up. I'm going to find the center line and drill straight through the center of the bottom cavity so I could have, you know, for the strap button. But right now I need to go get a couple of cutting discs for my Dremel to do that. So that one's not the biggest issue, so I'm just going to wait a little bit. It's not a... Again, I'm taking my time with this, so I'll probably be done with this probably late next month. It's not a huge rush project, which I keep telling myself that so I don't, you know, rush all the way through this whole thing and screw something up. But anyway, that's it for now. I tend to babble. I apologize. But this is where I'm at. Nut slot's done. Waiting on parts. Next week it's going to be intonation and making sure I got the nut in the right spot. Tuners are coming in too. And you guys have fun. Bye-bye.